Hello friends! This video is about making a bimetal axe from scratch. My axis wedge-shaped head was forged from a massive railroad pad with the eye punched out using a drift, while the cutting edge was made from high carbon steel of an old metal file. The axis handle was made from a stabilized aspen, while the handle's shoulder was additionally reinforced with carbon fiber. At first glance, one might think it is only a decorative axe, but let me assure you, it is the real deal. The axe underwent a year of brutal testing in the Russian outdoors. It was then further improved and now is successfully going through its final tests before being mailed to its new owner. Regardless of how you hold the axe, it produces no vibration or recoil. The axe's massive butt aids in balance and control. It works well for chopping, hacking, chiseling, and even cutting. I heavily use this axe and my new DIY chisel for all of the projects at my log cabin camp. I didn't even have to resharpen either tool a single time. The high carbon steel edge stays sharp for a long time. This axe was made as a reciprocal gift to one of my viewers, and presents shouldn't have any functional weaknesses or design flaws. I'm fully confident in this axe, and it will soon be going to its new owner. Let's get to the story of how this axe came to be. I forged the body of my axe from an old railroad pad. First of all, we need to cut it to size. I'm going to use my homemade side grinder cutting attachment to perform the task fast and safely. I use AC/DC or Metallica heavy metal CDs to cut thick pieces like this one. You could use Queen or Nirvana for softer metals. Only kidding. I'm probably going to catch a lot of fire from Queen and Nirvana fans for that. I particularly like my jig's sliding function. You can make a long and deep cut in only one pass. There are no vibrations, no disc biting or overheating. The cut ends up being nearly perfect, and the side grinder's disc gets less wear. If you can see any deficiencies in my cutting attachment, or you come up with an idea on how to improve the jig, I would love to hear your suggestions. Okay, I cut a rectangular metal bar, and now we can start forging it. I don't have much experience in forging metal. Also, I lack special instruments for the task. This is why I decided to drill a row of holes to make it easier to shape the axis eye later. To make the forging process safer, I welded a metal pin to the workpiece and slightly nudged it in the center with a regular rock chisel. It is a lot easier to see if you are off center on cold metal before you begin punching a hole by blacksmithing. Now it will be easier to find the central mark by feel when the metal is red hot, but there is no time to waste. We need to heat up the workpiece. I will use my portable gas forge I made from a tin barrel. In order to punch out the axis eye, I will have to keep the workpiece stable on its side. Because I don't have a helper, and I only have two hands for a hammer and a chisel, I will have to resort to a traditional blacksmith's trick, holding a workpiece with legs. This is why an anvil's top should be at the height at which your thumb hangs when you stand with your arms to your side. As the rock chisel gets deeper into the workpiece, it gets hot and soft, so you have to cool it down in water frequently, otherwise it will start deforming. I traded my small hammer and chisel for larger ones, and it noticeably sped up the process. Turning the workpiece while punching helps to shape a straight hole. Now I will need a conical eye drift to form a wedge-shaped tunnel for a handle. I made my own drift from two battery tractor thread pins I found earlier. They were not very straight, but my trusty grinder took care of their visual imperfections. I'm quite happy with the result, and now we can return to the axe forging process. I enjoy looking at and working with red-hot metal that is so unusually malleable in your hands. Physical work like this is more of entertainment for me as opposed to a computer or office work. called drift quickly cools off the workpiece and you have to reheat it every 10 to 15 hits. This cycle allows you to rest your arm while you wait for the metal to achieve about 1600 degrees Fahrenheit, 850 degrees Celsius. I don't have any digital gauges and I was going by the metal color just like our ancestors. The lighter the color, the hotter the metal. Raspberry color represents the temperature I needed. As I forced a drift all the way to the anvil, I began to further shape the eye, making it taller. The taller an eye, the tighter and more secure an axis handle will be seated in it. While the eye is cooled down by the drift, the rest of the body is still hot enough for shaping the axis cheeks. With each heating and hammering cycle, the axe becomes more and more asymmetrical. Its beard and toe begin to widen. For my design, I have to try to keep the toe in its current position and extend the heel backwards. Okay, as the drift went all the way through the axe's body, I decided to take a break and study the workpiece. I think you would agree with me, it already looks like an axe. It is time to reheat the workpiece to continue shaping the axe. I enlarged the eye a little and began to work on the bit. The cutting edge will need to be widened. Hammering it against an anvil will do the trick. The bit gets wider and thicker. It is very satisfying to shape hot metal with a file. Even an old semi-dull file easily shapes the workpiece. While giving my axe a rough shape, I arrived to the next step. Because I decided to make my axe bimetal, the next step will be welding a narrow piece of high carbon steel into the blade's softer metal. I used an old Soviet-made metal file as a high carbon steel donor. This way, the high carbon cutting edge will stay sharp much longer, while the axe's body, made of softer steel, wouldn't chip or crack. I haven't quite mastered forge welding yet, so I decided to play it safe and used an electric welder to create a metallic bond between the atoms of both metals. U10 high carbon tool steel and softer ST3 grade steel that came from the railroad pad. I'm planning to make my next bimetal axe using a traditional forge welding technique though. As I was finishing shaping the bit, the cutting edge got too wide for my gas mini forge, so I had to use my coal forge made from 2 metal buckets and sand as a heat insulation. Switching from gas to coal fuel was actually a plus for me because the coal forge doesn't draw carbon from the metal. My improvised anvil doesn't have a horn, which makes it more difficult to shape the axe's contour. However, I managed to give my axe the shape I had in mind without it, almost entirely by blacksmithing. I think I'm ready to make a more complicated project. Perhaps an axe with more complex and exotic geometry, similar to my vintage Bilnus No. 9 finish axe, shown in some previous videos. I must have gotten a few hundred comments over a short period of time asking about what kind of an axe it was. Because this axe is a gift, it should look presentable, which means I will need to grind and polish it. I wanted to give my axe a distinct handmade look, so leaving some hammer marks would be a good thing. This is why I used a soft radial sanding disc to do initial sanding and polishing. To further individualize the axe, I branded it with 2 of my logos. You can see them at the bottom of your screen as watermarks. Before doing it, I had to reflatten the axe's eye to prevent its recoil. It is important because you have to stamp a logo with one strong decisive punch. The axe's recoil can spoil the branding process. Despite my expectations, it took me some time to restore the eye's geometry to where it was before branding the axe. Conclusion: if you want to stamp your axe with a logo, do it before you fully shape its eye. Okay, as the eye is back to its normal conical shape with its outer opening being wider, we can get to the final checks and corrections of the axe's geometry before quenching and tempering it. I quenched the axe's cutting edge in a small amount of warm oil. Such selective heat treatment will only harden the axe's cutting edge, leaving its body and eye comparatively soft, which prevents it from cracking during heavy use. In this video, I attempted to show that even a novice metalworker can make a decent axe from scraps as long as he or she has time and desire. In the next video, I will share details on how I polished and sharpened my axe. Also, I will show how I made, stabilized, and installed the axe handle using 3 wedges, as well as how the handle's shoulder was reinforced with carbon fiber. Finally, you will see my axe being tested, as well as how you can easily make plastic axe guards of different designs. P.S. There are hundreds of videos on YouTube showing how to make a side grinder's stand. I'm not sure if the world needs yet another design of it. If you still want to see a video about my sliding side grinder's stand, let me know below, please. If you liked this video, perhaps you could share it with your friends. Let good people watch good videos. This is Maxi Gorov, St. Petersburg, Russia. And a final note, I only produce 1 or 2 videos max a month, and if you don't want to miss new content like this, you can click on the bell reminder for notifications. I hope to see you back on Advoco Makes.